Welcome back to Talking Talent with TaRita. Today we're going to talk about unconscious bias, and I want to credit this information to the Cultural Intelligence Center right here in Grand Rapids. They have a lot of training. I was certified in unconscious bias and cultural intelligence through them. So let's get started. What is unconscious bias? It's that unintended, subtle, unconscious thinking that we all have. Let's get that out the way right now. Everybody has bias. And the beauty about this is that we can change it. It can be unlearned, but you have to be aware of what your biases are. And so there's two types of thinking. There is the system one thinking, which is unconscious, it's automatic, it's fast, it's emotional. Your system two thinking is rational, it's deliberate, it's intentional. And so we want to move from system one to system two thinking when we think about our biases. And our biases are developed based off of how our worldviews have been shaped. So think about yourself as an individual, how you grew up, the community you were raised in, your family of origin. What have they passed down to you that are biases? Religious and non-religious biases, political affinities have all sorts of biases associated with it. When we think about diversity on every spectrum. So when we look at race, when we look at disability, when we look at gender, when we look at ageism and sexism and all of the isms, all of these things, when we think about the diversity spectrum that biases are shaped from. So for instance, when we think about disability, if we think that a person just can't do the job because they have some level of disability and we're uncomfortable with it, we can have a bias there and not hire people based off of that bias and not even understand that we're operating from that place of bias that we have. That's why it's so important to be intentional about your thinking, because this impacts every work environment, and it also impacts how you go about your community, how you go about in your day-to-day when you're dealing with people. We have to begin to peel back these biases that we were sometimes just learned from our parents or our families, or just not being knowledgeable about people. If we look at the media and we've never been around a certain group of people, we can have all types of biases. And when we actually meet somebody, then we realize that that bias is not true. And biases also help to create these stereotypes that people often have. I can tell you one way to get rid of biases is to begin to develop relationships with people that are not like you. If I hang around all of the people that are like me, that think like me, that come from the same backgrounds and communities that I come from, then I'm going to have a very narrow view of how I see the world and how I see people. Everybody didn't grow up the way that you grew up, and it's so important to build relationships with people, to hear their stories, to come from a place of authenticity and really a place of learning. That's another way that you increase and enhance your emotional intelligence. So I really want you to think about your biases. There's lots of resources to help you in this area. There's the Harvard Implicit Bias Association test that you can take free online. There's the Intercultural Development Inventory, the IDI. We have a lot of folks that we know that are certified in these different things. And of course, our own Cultural Intelligence Center here. Lots of folks that can come in and do training. So we will have resources available to you. I would also be willing to come in and do some training, because we really want to unpack biases. When we think about talent, when we think about attracting and retaining talent, our biases can get in the way of those functions. Thank you so much.